as the Lessons of the Holocaust class teacher here at Heights High, to welcome you all to the 2019 community-wide performance of Adekiva's Testimony Theater. Prior to this evening's performance, with great sadness, I and all the community partners for tonight's event are requesting that everyone pause and respectfully acknowledge in their hearts the deaths in the past year of the following members of our special Holocaust education community. Dr. Leitra Swabinsky, of blessed memory, whom we honored at last year's Testimony Theater premiere performance right here in this auditorium, passed away in June. Dr. Rubinsky was not only the founder of Holocaust education here at Heights High in the 1970s, she was an internationally acclaimed expert in the field, and for over 40 years uniquely contributed to local, state, and national Holocaust education curriculum. On a personal note, Dr. Rubinsky was my teacher here at Heights, my mentor, and my friend. Like many of you here tonight, Dr. Rubinsky was a significant influence on my life and my career, and she is deeply missed by all. As Sarah Bloomfield, the longtime director of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, so accurately declared at the time of Dr. Rubinsky's death, Beatrice was an exceptional woman whom I shall never forget, a leader and pioneer in Holocaust education who shaped many lives. Her legacy as a teacher and friend will endure. Additionally, in the past months, our community lost a number of Holocaust survivors, several of whom were significant contributors to Holocaust education efforts in our schools, our temples, and at the Maltz Museum of Jewish Heritage. At this time, we'd like to also remember them in our hearts. Stanley Burnett, of blessed memory. Sylvia Maltmacher, of blessed memory. Leo Silberman, of blessed memory. Walter Wertheim, of blessed memory. As Holocaust survivor and author Primo Levi said in sharing his Holocaust experiences, never forget that this has happened. Remember these words, engrave them in your hearts. Teach them to your children. May I humbly request at this time that we all recommit to those dear survivors we've lost over the years and to all who perished in the Holocaust, that we will both remember and that we will continue to hear their voices and tell their stories. At this time, I'd like to ask Sherry Gross, the director of Adekiva's Testimony Theater program, to step up to the podium and say a few introductory words about tonight's production. Thank you again for being here.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you all for coming. This is our third year with Testimony Theater. And before I talk very briefly about the experience and the process, I do want to acknowledge, I know I saw Erica Gold here. Erica, where are you? Erica, we shared Erica's story last year, and I'm happy to see her here. And our first year, we shared the story of Mr. Albert Pollock, and he is here. Can I reveal your age, Mr. Pollock? He is here celebrating his 97th birthday this evening. So we're very happy to have him here tonight as well. Our students that you're going to see tonight have been working together since the beginning of the school year. They have interviewed survivors or their families. We've taken their stories and we've put them together in a play so that we can share their journey with you. Many of the students have been in this program before. Many of the students have not. We have students from Orange, Beechwood, Solon, Schechter, Mizrahi, Mandel, HB, and Israel, our Shinshinim that are here for the year. So we sort of cover the gamut. And some of them have been on stage before, and some of them have never been on stage before. But they're so committed to the idea of Holocaust education that they were willing to take a risk and step out of their comfort zone and be here with you tonight. So I hope you really enjoy what you see and take it to heart and feel the same way that our cast does, that we are committed to the fate of Judaism, the fate of our world and making sure that the world never forgets. We hope that you pay attention to the screen as well, because we have a PowerPoint that supports the program that you're going to see. And a special thank you to Mark Sack and to Amnon Ophir, the JECC, and Akiva for all of their hard work putting this together. Thank you.
Europe in the early 1930s.
Jewish children went to school, played outside, dreamed of a future.
Owned businesses and provided for their families.
Jewish mothers filled their homes with the smells of delicious food and sang their children to sleep.
Jewish celebrations were filled with music and dancing.
Their lives were interrupted by the Nazis.
Her name is Sylvia Maltzmacher.
My name is Ava Waxman.
My name is Pearl Kukulis.
My name is Laura Rosenberg.
My name is Felix Rosenfeld.
She was born in
I was born in
1926.
I was born in 1921.
The Nazis invaded Poland.
The Nazis invaded Hungary. The Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia. The Nazis invaded.
I survived.
Imagine if someone said to you, you have only a few minutes to pack up everything in your home, in your life that you want to take with you. What would you take? How would you feel?
This is the story of Zlata Sylvia Maltzmacher, the most beautiful woman with a sexy accent. It's okay for me to say that. I was married to her for 58 years. We met in a displaced persons camp after the war. That was the beginning of our story, but the beginning of hers was in a town in Poland called Vilna.
I grew up in a thriving city with arts and culture, rabbis and scholars. I had such a happy childhood. I loved going to movies and plays and spending fun times with my friends and my sisters.
In June of 1941, the German army marched into Vilna with tanks and on foot, and according to Zlata, that is when hell started.
Zlata was 13, and suddenly she wasn't allowed to go to school. There was a curfew and a dress code.
I was supposed to graduate 8th grade and make a speech about Shalom Aleichem, and now that was gone. I was so emotional and upset about it, but then I began to understand what was really happening.
On that day, hundreds of Jews were grabbed off the streets and from their homes randomly and taken to the Ponary forest and killed.
They were forced to dig ditches, and then they were shot and thrown into those ditches to save them themselves. A few people were still alive, but they pretended to be dead. Once the SS left, they snuck back into the city and told people what had happened in Ponary.
By October, the Vilna ghetto was established. Zlata was lucky, because her family's apartment were inside the ghetto's walls, but it was quickly filled up with other families as well.
The ghetto was small and there was very little food. Many people died of starvation and we couldn't bury the dead, so people were put in the streets to be taken away.
In the meantime, people were still being loaded into trucks and sent to Ponary. In just a few years, 70,000 Jews were killed in that forest.
One day, everyone under 16 was reported to the hospital for physicals. Zlata told her mother that she would take her younger sister Shikra, who was 11 years old.
When we got to the hospital, it was filled with children, and then...
I am taking this one to the back for an examination. You, go home.
No, please, I'm also under 16. I'm only 14. I'll go with my sister.
Get out of here.
I promised my mother that I would come back with my sister. I will stay away from
I told
her.
you to go home.
Zlata had to leave without her sister. She went home and kept watching out the window for Shifra, but they never saw her again. She found out later that all the children were taken to Ponary and killed.
My father was a printer, and because of this, he could make or change documents. My older sister Rachel had a friend named Hadassah who came to our apartment one night.
I went out to go get food, and when I came back, my whole family was gone. What do I do?
I decided that we would take in Hadassah. I still had Shifra's papers, and I changed them to show that she was older. We had also hid other families in a hole we had cut out in the wall behind the china cabinet.
They saved my life. I survived the war because of Zlata and her family, and she and I were the only ones to survive.
Zlata's whole family, including Hadassah, posing as her sister, were taken to a concentration camp, Kaiserwald in Oldorf.
Imagine if someone said to you, You only had a few minutes to pack up everything in your home, in your life that you would want to take with you. What would you take? How would you feel?
And then to be thrown on a train and treated like cattle. And then when you arrive at your destination, everything you packed, everything you chose was taken from you.
I have no pictures of my family. It is my biggest regret. I have no pictures of myself or my family from my childhood. I only see their faces in my dreams and my nightmares.
Zlata and her family were moved again to shoot-off camp. On the way, their heads were shaved. And when they got there, her father was taken from them. He was put on a boat on the Baltic Sea that was set on fire. All of the men had burned or drowned.
In Studov, we had to stand for hours and hours and appels to be counted. If you were too sick to stand, you would be killed. One day, an officer picked 50 girls to go to another camp. My sister and I were chosen, but not my mother.
Rocco stayed behind to shield her mother, who had a sore on her leg. If they found out about the sore, they would have killed her.
Zlata was separated from her mother, sister, and friend Hadassah.
Her hands got frozen when she was made to do work. She had to dry clothes. Her hands got frozen. She suffered from this to the end of her life.
On May 5th, 1945, the Americans marched in and on the loudspeakers announced,
You are free.
What is free? Can I just leave? Where do I go? I have no home, no state, no name. I'm a number. I don't belong anywhere. I have no identity.
After liberation, a group of survivors were sent to Feldafing, a DP camp near Munich. Zlata had hoped she would find some of her family there. She found out that her mother and sister had died of typhus.
She had to grow up very fast. She was alone in the world.
Until she met me. I'd survived with my mother, 2 brothers and a sister. I could give Zlata a family again. We were married in a double wedding, with Zlata in a borrowed wedding gown. She wore a ring made out of gold, which my mother hid in the heel of her shoe throughout the war.
Our oldest daughter was born in the DP camp. We waited 4 years since we had no family in America to sponsor us. When we were told we were leaving and going to Cleveland, we said, "What's in Cleveland?"
This is Zlata's story, my great-grandmother's story. My great-grandmother moved to Cleveland and raised 2 devoted daughters, 4 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren, and along with many nieces and nephews.
My mother missed her teenage years. My mother missed her teenage years, all of those teenage experiences, because they were robbed from her. But she has always been thankful to this wonderful free country that allowed us to come here when I was a child. My father worked as a meat packer, my mother as a seamstress. They made a loving home and a wonderful life where she surrounded herself with all of her family pictures.
My grandmother always wondered why she was chosen to survive. She always told us to appreciate all that we have and to be open-minded and accept everyone for who they are, because we never want anyone to go through this again.
Maybe it's meant to be that I should be able to remember my family and all the others who lost their lives during the war. Maybe that is the reason
She
I
survived.
I keep my faith, just nobody should hurt me. That's all I ask.
Grandma, are you comfortable? Are you feeling ready to do this?
Ready? I don't know if I'm ready. I've been up all night thinking about the questions you may ask me. But I want to get my story out. I want to do it.
Okay, then let's begin. This is the story of Eva Hecht Stern-Waxman, a true survivor.
I was born in Romania, which was traded to Hungary during the war to make Hitler happy. I was the 3rd child. I had 3 sisters and a little brother.
Our lives were so happy. We lived next to our uncle and cousins, and we all grew up together. There was horses and cows and land and laughter and love.
We had farms and a distillery and forests and a leather factory. We provided many jobs. The villagers were not anti-Jewish. We all knew each other. We were very well respected in our village.
When the Nazis came to power, we didn't really feel it.
We had to wear a yellow star, and we suddenly weren't allowed to go to school.
What would happen if you didn't wear the yellow star?
Are you kidding? They would have taken us to jail or shoot us. Everyone knew that the Jews were here.
Ava's family heard the news from travelers, but everything was minimized, and the kids were kept in the dark.
Then it started to get worse. They called us names. They called us suckers. They all stayed away from us. Right before Ava's 16th birthday, they came.
You have an hour to come gather your things and come with us.
What should we take with us?
Whatever you want. You have an hour.
We began to pack things like pots and pans, dishes and pillows. We packed lunch and dinner.
Ava's older sister was getting married, and her mother had started putting things away for her, and they took those.
Where did you think you were going?
They said we were going down to the shul.
And then where are we going?
It's better that you don't know. Don't ask.
Grandma, you said something about a rabbi once.
Oh, right. I saw my father and the rabbi, these two honorable men. These Hungarian officials took scissors and cut off their beards. I felt shocked and helpless.
Then they were taken to an old empty factory, but they couldn't all fit inside, so they just sit out in the rain and mud.
They used the sheets and blankets from Ava's sister's trousseau to make tents. One neighbor threw a bread or a few potatoes, and someone else grabbed it and ate it.
Eventually, we were thrown on a train and taken to Auschwitz. We rode for 4 or 5 days.
I knew on the train that I will always be different from this experience. It would affect me for the rest of my life.
When the doors of the train opened, we all fell out. People were yelling at us constantly. Immediately, the men and women were separated, and Ava was face to face with Mangala.
He was very handsome, tall, with an immaculate officer's uniform, sending people to left, to right.
My mother, my older sister, and my little brother were sent to the left. We did not know at the time that that was to the gas chambers. I was sent to the right with my 3 cousins. One cousin was sent to the left, but she kept jumping over a ditch to come back to us. But Mangala took her back. But a guard created a diversion, and she jumped back over to us. We don't know why, but we will always be grateful.
We were taken to a building, stripped naked. They shaved our hair. They were screaming and beating us.
It was the first time Ava saw a naked woman. She and her cousins had to hold hands because they couldn't recognize each other, with their heads shaved.
They were put in a barracks with no beds, no chairs, and holes in the ceiling so that it rained in.
They had us stand in water, and they slept holding each other up. One night, Ava couldn't stop crying, and a guard came and slapped her. Then they were put to work.
Yes, I was put in charge of carrying food across the yard from the kitchen. It was soup, and we had to be very careful not to spill it.
They had to stand for hours for roll call at 5 a.m. They couldn't talk, move, fall down, or go to the bathroom.
That must have been so hard on you.
It affected me always. Later in my life, I could never stand in line, not for food, not for anything. I stood in line enough.
After all 4 of us were selected, we didn't know for what. We went to Bergen-Belsen. We made munition bullets. The sounds of the machines were hypnotic, and we were so tired it was hard to stay awake. But the SS were different here. They beat us, but they didn't kill us.
We had a blanket, a spoon, and a bed of hay. It was better.
You were also reunited with your cousin's best friend, right?
Yes, Tucky, my cousin Shepsy's best friend. We stayed together from that point on.
People have been saying the Americans were coming and heard bombing. So on Easter, they jokingly said,
Let's go see if the Americans are here.
But that day, they were. The tanks with American soldiers came and they gave them eggs and chocolate. As one tank hatch opened, it was the first time ever saw a black man.
Oh, he had the kindest eye. He gave her chocolate and said 4 €. I slowly spoke Yiddish to them.
The Americans treated them like babies. They cooked, opened shops, and told them to take whatever they wanted. Ava was given a blue fox coat. When the Americans left, and the British weren't as nice to them, but they gave them a safe passageway to America.
Why did you decide not to go to America?
We felt that we couldn't leave. We wanted to see if anyone else survived. We had no money or transportation to get to Romania, but we knew we had to try.
We took passage on a train, but we were told to hide underneath the coal on top of the train because the Russian soldiers were on the train, and they were not good to the young women.
As the soldiers were searching the train, they stepped on Ava and her cousin. but they got there.
Before the war, Ava's family had 2 dogs. When they arrived at the train station, one of the dogs was waiting for them.
After a year and a half of being gone?
The dogs sensed that we were coming. It was incredible, but that's not all.
When they got to their neighborhood, the houses had been destroyed and emptied. But one cousin Pinchas survived, and he helped find things to furnish the house.
One day, 4 years later, the dog started going crazy. He ran from the house, he went to the train station. And there was our other cousin who had been sent to a work camp after the war. He was home, the dog just knew.
I got married after the war to Mendel Stern, who had lost his wife and 2 daughters. He was 32, and I was 18 or 19. We had our daughter Leah. We made a kosher home. We were happy. Sadly, my husband died when Leah was young.
My grandmother had a rough journey from Romania to Poland to Italy to New York. She had taken English lessons, typing, business courses, and bookkeeping. My grandfather had long passed away before she traveled to Cleveland to marry her second husband, Stanley Waxman. In 1980, Stanley passed away. Again, she lost her husband. But she was resilient. Above all, she believed in family. She was gentle, she was fancy. She liked to get her hair done, and everyone said she was a lady.
It is hard for me to put myself out there in a brave way, but I've been through a lot, and I thank God, and I'm appreciative.
She appreciated everything she had.
I try my best, and I keep my faith. Just nobody should hurt me. It's the only thing I ask. Well, I spoke myself out. My name is Ava Waxman, and
She survived.
There is goodness in all people. We should all live and let live.
In 1921, Pearl Herskowitz was born in Czechoslovakia. Actually, Helen was born first. You see, after the midwife delivered Helen.
Wait, I feel a food. There's another baby. She's the run of the litter. This one won't survive.
I guess I had to be a fighter from the beginning. My name is Gisela, Pearl. I'm the youngest of 9 children, although my eldest sister died before I was born. Helen and I have 2 other sisters and 4 brothers.
We're identical twins. In fact, we used to play tricks on people all the time. We played tricks on our dates, our teachers.
After grade school night, there was a quota for Jews going to school. Pearl was chosen, but Helena was not.
One night, Helen went out with friends and someone was glaring at her all night. The next day, Pearl was called into the headmaster's office.
You violated the rules. You were out last night and you were not supposed to be.
But I wasn't.
Yes, you were. Someone saw you.
Oh, you see, I have a twin sister. It must have been
Twin
her.
sister. That's absurd. I do not believe you.
The next day,
Pearl brought Helen into the office, and the headmaster almost fainted.
We were always having fun. We had a wonderful life, a close family. We were so happy.
Then, in April of 1944, the Jews were transported, even though it was close to the end of the war. Pearl's mother had already died, but the rest of her entire family was sent to Auschwitz.
As we were being loaded onto cattle cars, our non-Jewish neighbors promised to watch our house and our belongings. We thought we were just being relocated.
The trip was long and difficult. Pearl's family had an onion with them. That was their only food. They licked it throughout the trip.
When they were pushed out of the train, the orchestra was playing Czech music to keep people calm and feeling welcome.
Look, Helen, there's music here. It can't be all bad.
Little did they know, the smoke from the chimneys were ashes.
As a family came before Mengele, he said,
Twins, step out.
Pearl's father, sister, and her husband and their daughter were all sent to the left. Another daughter, who was 14, was told by someone,
Hey, stay for 16. She was sent to the right. Today she is 88 and still will not talk about her experiences.
Helen and I were taken for examinations. We were stripped naked. They drew our blood. We were measured and compared.
We were given these shots. We don't know what they were. Sometimes we were freezing after, and sometimes we were boiling hot.
Mengele was very handsome and acted very kind to us. But I remembered that one day he yelled at a nurse because she forgot to draw blood, and in his anger, he sent 1,000 people to the gas chamber.
The twins got down to about 70 or 80 pounds. They ate watery potato soup to stay alive and had a job washing the sick patients.
We're looking for our father and sister. Do you know them? Do you know what happened to them?
Do you see the chimneys and the smoke?
One day, the guards were looking for volunteers to go to work. Helen and Pearl were chosen.
We were sent to a room that had many, many dead bodies. They were like skeletons. Our job was to pile the bodies 2 at a time and load them onto these trucks.
At one point, I got very sick, but Pearl made me push through.
On January 18th, 1945, the SS evacuated Auschwitz. On their birthday, the twins were marched through villages to escape the Russian soldiers.
Sometimes a farmer would throw out a potato, but the dogs kept the prisoners from getting it.
We had to eat snow to survive. Sometimes prisoners would beg the soldiers,
Please, just shoot me and get it over with.
We don't have orders to do that.
Finally, the Americans found them and took them to a nunnery. They eventually met up with their brothers and returned to their hometown.
When we came to our neighbors that promised to watch our belongings, they were wearing all our clothes and our jewelry, and all they said was,
Oh, we thought you were dead.
They gave back nothing.
They moved to Ushserod, and through the Red Cross, they managed to find the rest of their surviving family.
Pearl and her brother moved to Gary, Indiana, and met her husband.
They moved to Chicago and eventually Cleveland.
Pearl and Helena were true twins who felt each other's pain and had twin episodes when they weren't together.
Helen, you'll never believe this. This morning I was making chicken and I accidentally used cinnamon instead of paprika.
That's really funny, Pearl, because this morning I was making cookies and I accidentally used paprika instead of cinnamon.
My mother was a strong, brave, and very positive woman who gave us a home full of happiness, love, and Judaism. She ran a business out of her home. She was a baker and a cake decorator. In fact, she even won a National Grand Prize for her cake decorating. My aunt was a personal shopper and sold beautiful dresses. They both had businesses where they made people happy. They were lucky. 4 brothers and 3 sisters survived. My mother and my aunt had many medical problems. My aunt had terrible stomach problems and was actually diagnosed with tuberculosis of the bladder. We can't be sure, but we're fairly certain that these problems were related to the experimental shots and to the starvation that they endured over months. My aunt also had a bad leg, most likely from the marching. My mother never told us the details of her story when we were growing up, But as she got older, she and my aunt spoke to thousands of students about their experiences. Both of my parents, my father was also a survivor, died in 2010. I define myself as being the daughter of survivors.
I believe there is good in all people. The important thing is that ultimately Hitler did not win. Elie Wiesel said, "When you meet a survivor, you become a witness." It's your job to tell our stories so that Hitler never wins. My name is Pearl Poufalis, and
She survived.
You have to help other people. Don't hate others. Be friends. Try to get along with everyone.
Here, take my gun. You keep it in case you need it. I'll be arrested anyway.
This is Laura Rosenberg's story of survival. At this point, we're close to the end of her harrowing journey. To understand what's going on here, we have to go back to the beginning.
We won't go back to when Laura lived a free and happy life in the Jewish town of Sosnowiec with her parents and siblings, Franya and Edith.
Or to when her father had a thriving cattle business, with a life filled with art, music, and other luxuries.
Or to when the seamstress would come twice a year to make clothes and the family would vacation to the beach. Or to when Laura would ice skate and dance and study, graduating 7 languages under her belt.
We won't even go as far back as to when Laura wanted to go to a dance, and when she was told no, she slid down the banister and said, "I'm going," ever the rebel.
No. We will start when the Germans invaded Poland, when we had to wear yellow stars, and when we were moved into the Stradula ghetto into a one-bedroom apartment. At this time, my sister Franya had gotten married, had a baby, and moved north before the war. My brother Edith was called to the militia and served as a policeman in the ghetto, and I was a secretary for the Judenrat.
Laura had not experienced anti-Semitism before the war, but now, as the non-Jews were being displaced in order to form the ghetto, there was anti-Semitism and friction.
Occasionally, Germans came into the office where Laura worked. She had to stand at attention and answer, "Jawohl."
What is your name?
My name is Laura.
You are not Jewish. You have red hair, pale skin, blue eyes. Go home and ask your parents if you are Jewish.
The commandant repeatedly asked this question whenever he came into her office, and her answer was always the same.
I am Jewish.
Laura's parents decided to send her and her brother away to the country for their own safety. But their experience on the train was so terrible that they turned around and came back.
About this time, Laura's sister husband was arrested. Although it was illegal to travel, Franya got on a train with her baby. She jumped from train to train and found a way home. Someone Jewish turned her into the Judenrat, and a German soldier came and arrested her. She never returned. Someone wrote a fake letter from Franya saying she was okay, but she wasn't. The baby remained with Laura and her family.
One day they heard over the loudspeakers,
All Jews, report to the center of the field. Take whatever you can to the center of the field. Hurry, hurry.
We didn't know if we were going to be deported or killed. It was very hot and there was no water. There had been random killings in the ghetto, and by this time we had heard of these death camps. We were thrown onto cattle cars with no windows, just slats in the ceiling. We were packed like sardines. It was me, my mother, my father, and Franya's baby Lala. My brother Edek had to stay behind with the militia.
When they arrived in Auschwitz, it looked rather nice at first with an orchestra. Laura actually played the mandolin in that orchestra for a short time.
But there were also rifles and dogs. Laura and her parents each had bundles. Her mother quickly handed her a small bag of diamonds to keep with her.
Laura, along with Franya's baby and her mother, stood in line. Laura was only 20.
Whose baby is this?
Mine.
The officer took the baby from Laura and gave her to her mother and sent them both to the gas chamber. Laura and her father were sent to the right to live.
Laura was sent to the showers. She would have to strip, so she quickly swallowed the diamonds. Her head was shaved, she was painfully given a tattoo.
52436.
I was given a long black dress and no underwear. Ahead of me in line was my cousin, also Laura, so we decided that she would be Lola.
We were bunked 5 to 6 people in 2 beds with very little straw. The bathrooms were holes cut in benches outside.
We were scared to go at night. It was dark, and there were the dogs. We were scared all the time. We knew that we had to be strong and work hard, or else we would be gassed.
Laura was sent to sort clothes, and one day she found her own mother's dress. It was a dark green two-piece dress that she had made.
She smuggled it out and wore it under her black one.
Prisoners were made to stand for hours for appels. One day, in addition to the usual cruel commandant, the commandant that used to come to the office was there. He recognized her and announced,
Any Jews who worked in the ghetto, come forward. This one, she's a good worker. You should make her your secretary.
Laura knew that if she got the job, it would mean a little more bread, some tea, and maybe even some salami. So one day she took a chance and said to the mean commandant,
I'm wondering when I'm going to get the job that Herr Commandant mentioned.
He hit her and knocked her into a ditch.
She was sent to dig ditches, and she became friendly with the Czech woman in charge. She managed to get her an interview, but it was with a very cruel woman. But Laura flattered her.
You know, you're a very beautiful woman. You remind me of my mother.
the job is yours. You'll move to a new barracks.
But after one day, Laura got typhus. She had dysentery and lice and had to go to the infirmary.
She was friendly with some of the nurses. One day, a nurse said to her urgently,
You have to sit in that band if you want to stay out of the gas chambers. Sit up and pinch your cheeks. I'll help you.
You don't look well.
I'm fine, but I would be much better if I could have an orange and a piece of chocolate. Then I'd be ready to go back to work tomorrow.
The nurse was shocked. Lola helped nurse Laura back to health, she eventually became the secretary for the new barracks, where she met all different kinds of people, Jewish, non-Jewish, Catholics, and gypsies who told her her fortune.
Suddenly, she was moved to Nuremberg, then to Melchior, where they made aviation parts. She was in charge of 12 women. It was better there. The commandant there was in his 70s, and he also did not want to be there.
But there were three mean women guards who gave brutal beatings and long lineups. One guard was very mean to Laura.
Your shoulder moved.
My shoulder did not move.
She chased Laura to the barracks where Laura slammed the door in her face. She made an enemy that day and was made to do forced labor. But Laura had an idea.
Do you want me to tell you your fortune?
Yes.
I made up such a good fortune for her, and just like that, we were friends.
On April 16th, 1945, liberation came, but it was chaos. There were bombings all the time. Prisoners were sent into the forest to hide and then brought back. It was at this time that the commandant from the office found Laura.
Here, take my gun. You keep in case you need it. I'll be arrested anyway.
The Americans came with chocolate and fruit and candy. Laura was afraid to eat too much because she thought she might get sick.
The party was out of control, so she grabbed a broom and started swinging.
Everybody, out!
Her friends got so sick that I said, but they were free.
This was the best and worst day of my life. I was free, but I was also alone. I didn't know who was dead or alive. I had no means of support.
My mother was a beautiful, talented, smart, feisty woman. She and my father made a beautiful life. They had 4 children, though my mother lost her mother, father, sister, brother, niece, brother-in-law, and only 3 of her cousins survived the war. My mother never talked about the war. She and my father, who was a member of the Liberating Army, and who helped my mother get to the United States after the war. She actually couldn't tell this part of the story, but she had to be smuggled over the border and did a lot of brave things. But she wanted us to have what she called a normal life. And she was a wonderful woman who gave back to the community, did all kinds of things to help make the world a better place. She lived by the mantra, live, laugh, love. It wasn't until her later years in life that she felt she wanted us to know what she had gone through. And so through the Shoah Foundation and through other organizations in Florida, she told her story. My mother once told me, you can get through anything if you have a buddy. Her buddy was Lola, and they both survived.
You have to help other people. Don't hate others. Be friends. Try to get along with everyone. My name is Laura Rosenberg, and I survived.
Nobody should ever have to be in this kind of situation. We have to make sure of it.
Mr. Rosenfeld, thank you for coming to tell us your story. We know it isn't easy.
It isn't easy, but we have to tell so that no one will forget what we went through.
Well, we are grateful you are here. Please begin when you are ready.
Okay. Have any of you heard of the siege of Leningrad?
Isn't that when the Germans formed a blockade around the city and bombed it? It was also known as the 900-day siege.
Many people died of the bombings, but more people died of starvation.
Yes, that's correct. It began in 1941. I was 4 years old. My father was sent to mandatory service 3 months before it began. He was an officer and was sent to the front. When he left, it was the last time my mother and I ever saw him.
Before the siege, Felix had a normal life. He was raised in a 6-story apartment shared by neighbors.
His grandfather was a religious man who kept kosher and went to shul regularly, but there were not many Jews in their area.
But there was no anti-Semitism even during the siege. The Germans hated the Russians, so it didn't matter whether or not if someone was Jewish.
People heard on the radio that the Germans were going to bomb, so some people ran to the bomb shelter in the front of the building. But Felix and I decided to stay in our apartment in the back of the building. I covered up the window with thick materials to stop them from shattering.
The front of the building was bombed, and everyone in the shelter died, including some people on the street.
I remember after the bombing stopped, my mother, I will never forget the look of it. It was like a zoo. People were covered in blood, people were dead in the streets, or wandering around aimlessly. Some people were missing body parts.
The Germans bombed the big food warehouse in the marketplace. This was the beginning of years of starvation for the people of Leningrad.
The blockade meant that the only access to and from the city was a small corridor over a lake. Many people tried to get out of Leningrad, but only some succeeded, and others fell through the ice and sank.
This also meant that there was no way to bring food in. Each person was given 120 grams of bread a day, and most of it was made of sawdust or other inedible materials. People could not survive.
The reason we survived is because my grandfather had a job making belts out of leather. We would take the scraps of leather and boil them in the oven for 24 hours. We ate the jelly to survive.
One day, Felix's friend's grandfather was trying to get up to his own apartment. He died of starvation right in front of our door.
People had to get their water from a river or from a drain under the street.
One time I was playing with the neighbors, and I fell down the drain. All the other kids ran away. They were just kids, and they didn't know what to do. I fell down all the way to my shoulders, but luckily I managed to climb out onto the ice.
Felix went to kindergarten, and he got a little bit more food there, but anytime anyone dropped a crumb, all the kids would rush to eat it off the floor.
The conditions were terrible. I remember my mother jumping up on the table to small the ice. We couldn't eat those, but people began eating other things.
The starvation was out of control. People began eating pigeons, cats, and dogs. There were no more animals because everyone ate them out of desperation.
And then cannibalism became a problem. People began to eat corpses off the streets, or worse, they began to kill in order to eat human flesh to survive.
A statistic came out of Leningrad that by 1942, they'd arrested 2,105 cannibals, mostly mothers trying to provide for their children.
By the time the blockade ended, Felix became very sick. He had what used to be called dystrophia. It's a disease caused by malnutrition.
I was in the hospital, but luckily the American Red Cross were able to get through the narrow road, send medical supplies, and spam for us to eat. This played a big role in my recovery.
After the war, the German POWs were forced to rebuild our city. It was our sweet revenge.
Mr. Rosenfeld, were you scared as a child living in these kind of conditions?
Well, the bombings were very scary, but other than that, I was a child and I didn't understand how bad things really were. We saw the air raid balloons, but I didn't think of anything then, and I was mischievous. One time, I put a booklet under a train track. When the train went by, it shot right past my ear.
I remarried later after the war. I married a man who lost his family in the concentration camps. We didn't know about the camps during all of this. We eventually heard about it on the radio, but we were living a separate kind of hell. Happily, my husband and I had another child, so Felix had a brother.
Mr. Rosenfeld, I know you said you didn't experience much anti-Semitism during the war, but did you experience any after the war?
Yes, actually. I wanted to go to college, but most universities would not take Jews. But I went, and I became a mechanical engineer. I also met my wife, and we were blessed with our daughter, Annie.
Leningrad is now St. Petersburg. Me and my family left in 1980 and immigrated to the United States. We moved around for several years and then finally settled in Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up. When I came to Cleveland to study a case, I met my husband, and my parents decided eventually to join us. And then finally, our children, Gabriella and
me, Ryan. I'm honored to be able to share my grandfather's story and say his words that no one should ever have to be in this situation. We have to make sure of it. I want to thank my grandfather for allowing me to portray him and allowing me to say for him. My name is Alex Rosenfeld. I survived.
He survived.
Her name is Sylvia Maltzmacher.
My name is Ava Waxman.
My name is Pearl Bufalos.
My name is Laura Rosenberg.
My name is Felix Rosenfeld.
She was born in 1926.
I was born in 1921.
The Nazis invaded over 80 years ago.
But it was not a lifetime ago.
A synagogue in Pittsburgh.
A playground in New York.
A cemetery in France.
The Nazis invaded, but we continue to stand up, to tell the stories.
We will survive.
Go.
few moments if you have any questions for our cast or for any of us about the process or any of the stories. But first, I just want to take a moment to thank the families of our survivors. They came and shared these stories, and it's really hard for them to do that. And they got up here and read the ends of the stories, and I applaud you all, and I thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, or if any of you have anything that you want to share in terms of the process, anybody? There's somebody over here. Hold on. I'm coming with a microphone. Hi. Do you want... So the question was, how long have we been working on this? Do you guys want to answer?
Which part exactly?
How long have we been working on? I guess start with the process. What did we start with, and then where did we go from there?
The fall. Like, we started in the fall. We got to hear the survivors or the survivors' families' stories, and we, as they were speaking, we just jotted down some notes about, you know, what basically like the summary of the story, things that stood out to us, or, you know, had some kind of like, you know, something that that we thought was interesting.
So yes, we started in September with that process. We interviewed survivors over the past couple of those months, September through around November. And then as we got each story, we started writing. I took all of their notes as well as my own notes because I think it's interesting to see what they find from the stories that sticks out to them and what impacts them. So I used their notes to write the stories, and we start rehearsing as we get each story. So we actually just finished a few weeks ago because Ryan's grandfather's story came to us on the later side. So we've been working on this, long story short, since September. Any other questions? Anybody? Yes.
Are all your young people either children or grandchildren of survivors, all of you, or just some of you?
Did everyone hear the question? Yeah. The question was, are all of the students grandchildren or great-grandchildren or related to survivors in some way?
No. I'm not.
I am.
Raise your hand if you, first raise your hand if you're related to one of the survivors in these stories. So we were fortunate in terms of 4 of the 5 stories, these students got to portray either their grandfather, their great-grandparents. Perry, in his situation, portrayed his great-grandfather, but we did his great-grandmother's story. How many of you have family that either are survivors or have perished or have a connection to the Holocaust?
Should I raise my hand again?
Huh? How many of you have a relationship to somebody from the Holocaust? And how many of you are just here because you care and want to be here? All of you, but I know.
How can we not raise our hand?
Right. Other questions? So something that I find interesting, I got to speak to a group at Park Synagogue recently about testimony theater. It was a wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to these ladies. And something that strikes me is the difference in Holocaust education now versus when I was a child. And I talked about this a little bit last year, but when I was a child in the 70s, I was born in 68, the Holocaust hadn't happened that far along, like long before. We started learning about the Holocaust in 2nd grade. So as young as 2nd grade, I was singing at Yom HaShoah programs at our JCC. We had thousands of people there. We had survivors coming in their concentration camp uniforms. And as young as 2nd grade, 3rd grade, our chorus was singing songs We were reading poems from Theresienstadt. We were reading I Never Saw Another Butterfly. And that was something that was just part of our growing up. We knew about this. We lived among survivors. Nowadays, parents are protective in a different way of their children. So Holocaust education in some schools starts in 7th grade, if at all. So I just find that interesting. It's a different world today than when I was a kid. Yes?
I would just like to say, apropos of that, if the young people today can play the games that they play on the television or computer or whatever it is, and watch the movies that they do, even with the supposed Batman and Superman and the all saviors, they can certainly see and know what actually happened during the Holocaust.
I agree. What this lady said was that if kids today can play the games they play and see the movies they see with the violence and the topics that they deal with on social media or on their games, they should be able, at a young age, to deal with this topic that is the truth of our history. I agree. I agree.
Sherry, can I say something?
Please.
So hi guys, you can first of all hear my accent, and those guys live here in Cleveland, except then this girl, Shachak, and I, we finished school and we came here to do a gap year before the army. And when we came to this program, we just fell in love with the program and those kids. We have a thing in Israel, when you finish 12th grade, so you go to Poland with your whole grade. And you just go and see everything, Auschwitz and Treblinka and all the gas chambers, and you can see everything in your eyes and hear the stories. So coming here and do these things is so meaningful for me, and I'm sure for all of you. And it's just an amazing program. So thank you guys.
I want to just let you know quickly about the Yom HaShoah HaGvura program, which is Wednesday, May 1st at the Bnei Yeshurun. It is the community Yom HaShoah program. We hope that you will all attend that program. It's always very, very meaningful. Are there any other questions? Yes?
So an alumni of High Tie, yay!
Alumni of High Tie over here.
Why was it High Tie that was chosen? I heard Mutual and I heard, I believe, other high schools. What do you want?
You're embarrassing me.
So the question was, why were there no students from High Tie in this program?
It's a good question. I don't have an answer. I teach a course called Lessons of the Holocaust. We have students engaged in learning about the Holocaust. I think we'll have to do a better job to recruit Hike students to participate in this. We do other things. We do field trips. We have Holocaust survivors come in and talk to our students. But that's a good point. We'll have to do a better job of trying to get a few of our Hike students. As long as I'm up here as the official host of the event here tonight, I want to give a special shout out and thanks to Keith Newman, who's head of the stage crew program. This stage had, 3 or 4 performances over the weekend with a full set, and they did a tremendous job of helping us out and making the facility ready for us. I'd also like to thank the Hike Schools Foundation. We have a Holocaust Education Fund at the foundation, and they help sponsor many of our special experiences for our students, including down to DC to the Holocaust Museum, the African American Museum. Our students just went on a trip to Memphis, Tennessee, where they saw the National Civil Rights Museum, and on the way home they stopped at the Cincinnati Holocaust and Humanities Center. So we're managing with the support of our Hike Schools Foundation to provide a number of very enriching experiences for our students here. There was a couple other hands that I saw from my angle. Did anyone else have a question or a comment? Here.
Sherry, first of all, I'd like to thank you for doing this. And I would like to invite the whole cast to the Yom HaShoah commemoration in 2 weeks. And you can carry the yahrzeit candles in the memory of the 1.5 million children that perished. Thank you.
Did you guys hear that? It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other, before we close, any last minute comments? Yes, no, it's okay.
No, that was the song, Vigala.
Oh, let me explain that. So the question was, there was a slide that said that somebody voluntarily went to Auschwitz, and that actually, the author of the song Vigala, that Kayla so beautifully sang, her name was Ilse Weber. She was in Theresienstadt with her son. She worked as a nurse in Theresienstadt, and she wrote that song, and she sang it as a lullaby to the children. And when her son was put on the train for transport, she decided to go with him. And they both died in Auschwitz. Okay, we're gonna the way we'll end this evening, and we invite you to go through these doors to a reception right outside. We'll end, there's been a request to do that song one more time. You ready, Kayla?
Yes.
Sure.
They asked what Vigala means.
The song itself means, how silent is the world, no sound disturbs the lovely peace. Sleep, my little child, sleep too. And it's written in German.
What does the word Vigil mean?
Does anybody speak German? Cradle.
Thank you, Google Translate.
Dad.
Vigala, Vigala, Feuer, der Wind spielt auf der Leier, spielt so süß im grünen Ried, die Nachtigall, die singt der Lied. Vigala, der Wind spielt auf der Leier. Vigala, Vigala, Vile, wie ist die Welt so stille? Es stört kein Laut, die süße Ruhe. Schlaf, mein Kindchen, schlaf auch du. Vigala, Vigala, Vile, wie ist die Welt so stille?
Thank you so much for being here. We thank you very much.
סירות נייר במים, רציתי רק לשוט הכי רחוק, אני אדם משום מקום שמחפש לו רק סיבה לנשום.